right, moving to the senses. So this is part 4 of our chapter 14 videos. This should be the last one, considering we only have about 30 slides to go. So I should be able to finish this up this last video. So let's get started. Okay, so in order to receive our sensory information in, it's going to go to a primary sensory cortex, and our body is able to make sense of the sensory information due to the association cortexes. So these are going to be close by our primary cortex, which allow us to make sense of the stimuli, also able to put in different types of sensory information in to figure out what's going on. So looking at some functional regions, we have our sensation, just generally sensation coming in, parietal cortex, our primary somatosensory cortex. So this is our sensory strip, and this is the association area for sensory. So making sense of what we're coming in. Yellow area here being our primary visual cortex, and all this green area is the association area for it. Primary auditory, this kind of darker orange, you can't really see it that well, but the association area for it is this lighter orange, and specifically this yellow lime green portion, which is called Wernicke's area. Yes, that's what they V. Blame the language. Okay, so Wernicke's area is our language association cortex, so we're making sense of what words we're hearing. So that's what's working now. Going over to the side, we have our primary motor cortex or motor strip. So that's in our part of our frontal lobe. The association area is all this area in blue. And this part in pink, which is Broca's area, which is for making a motor plan specifically for language. So regardless of you speaking or writing or text or sign language, that motor plan for what you're going to do is coming from that area. So going here, our main ones that we'll actually talk about, at least for here, we'll look at our sensory strip, which is our post-central gyrus. So here's is our central gyrus separating our frontal and parietal lobes. Our pre-central gyrus is our motor strip or motor cortex. So this is everything that I just said, only in text version. So focusing just on our special senses in the head. So we'll talk about more of our special senses, which are the senses located in our head region. We'll cover that in chapter 15. So I'm going to actually skip over this. So this will be your stuff like, how do we process vision? How do we hear? How do we stay balanced? So our equilibrium. Taste and smell, all of that will be in chapter 15. So we're going to focus on our general senses. So earlier I talked about our brain controlling the contralateral or opposite sides of the body, as well as receiving information from the contralateral or opposite side of the body. Nope, that's not here. I'm going to say it now, but I got to find the slide that says it. So in order to do that, the information decussates or crosses over. That's the reason why I want to find that word so I can actually show it to you and spelling and all that jazz. And so it's going to decussate or cross over in your brainstem area, so that can go to the opposite side of the brain or coming from the opposite side of the brain if it is a motor command. So let's look at how our senses work for our sensory strip. So this is just basic touch. So on both our sensory strip and motor strip, we have what's called a homunculus. So it's a map of the body in the particular location. So wherever we get, let's say something touched our foot, our hands touched something, that information is going to go to that specific area of that sensory strip. That was not good. Okay, I'll clean that later. Okay, so it's going to go here for the foot. It's going to go here for the hand. So with the information that comes in for that sensory area is reason why there are a lot larger regions. So for example, your hand has a larger region than for example, your arm region. So because it's doing more sensory touching type of information coming in. Your feet are a little bit more sensitive because they're walking. Wanting to see like, okay, If I'm stepping on something, make sure it's not going to possibly damage since you're keeping all your body weight on your foot as you're walking. Other sensory areas, your face is very sensitive, so that's why it's like this bloated head region, because it just has more representation. Your face is sensitive. That's why babies, they just put their mouths all over everything, because that's a good area of getting information into by just sticking it in their mouth. Also down here with your genitalia, those are the last ones to form for its mapping, because obviously during development you don't know what the genitalia are going to be, so the mapping happens kind of at the end. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, you got genitals, by the way, let's just put it somewhere. So this is why some people have a erotic fetish for feet, because there's a little bit of cross wiring between the foot section and the genital section. So here is if you had a sensory homunculus as a person. A lot of information coming to the head region, a lot of information coming into for the head region. Not head and hand regions. Okay, let's move on to motor control. So same thing like our sensory, we do have a motor strip that also has a motor homunculus where we are sending information to our muscles, and that is mapped out on that cortex. So just like we have a sensory association area, we have a motor association area. So that is where we plan what muscles need to move in order to have a certain action. That motor plan then gets sent to our precentral gyrus, also called our primary motor area or motor strip, to send the commands to the specific muscles. So similar situation for our sensory cortex. Our motor cortex has that homunculus, our map, that's going to show where different areas for the motor commands go. So we're going to have more motor command in the hand regions because it's doing all kinds of stuff. Face region, we're talking about talking, eyes moving, chewing, making expressions. That's a lot of motor command to control that. Our tongue also has a bunch of command to it. It moves around a lot. It's part of our speech, chewing up stuff, swallowing, so it helps to push back food. So it also has a bunch of jobs, so it has a big representation. So here is our motor homunculus. Again, a lot of representation, face and hand regions. Going back to our sensory, random topic. This is why we also kiss our partners and we like touching them, because we're getting all this sensory information from our mouth, face, tongue region, and our hands. So, just wait, I can't remember that one. Okay. Motor control. So we do have, there it is, that's the word. Found it. Okay, so motor control. Our information is going to decussate or cross over to the contralateral side in the level of your brain stem. So that's where they're going to make their exchange, and then eventually moving down to synapse, upper motor neuron to a lower motor neuron, where you're going to make that synapse in either the brainstem or spinal cord. That lower motor neuron is going to actually target the muscle. So it crosses over, and then you have your decussates, and then you have your synapse between your upper motor neuron that comes from the brain. Your lower motor neuron is going to go to your target. So with your other areas that help with coordination, different gray matter structures deeply embedded in your brain, such as your basal nuclei, your motor control is also affected by your cerebellum. So again, part of that coordination of sensory information coming in, motor commands going out, you're making sure that you're making the correct type of motions in order to do what you actually want to do. Okay, so moving on to language. So in order to understand language, that also includes reading language, writing it, speaking it, and being able to understand words. So two important areas of that is Wernicke's area, and this is where we're able to recognize language. Then let's say we want to make a response to it. So choosing the words that we want to say, we take that plan, we send it to Broca's area. Broca's area is going to create the motor plan for how to move the muscles in order to speak or write or sign whatever words that we want to say. And it's going to take that information, figure out which muscles need to move, and then send it to our primary motor cortex so we actually can tell the muscles to move. So here's our pathway for language. We see language, or we hear language, and that goes to our Wernicke's area. So this is where we process and understand words. So if we want to make a response, here's where we choose the words, and then we send it to, and this one, part's labeling, this part is Broca's, sometimes it's also labeled up here. Anyway, Broca's area, where we make the motor plan on how to, in this case, speak language here, or if you're writing language, it's going to go up towards the hand region. So even if you are doing sign language, same concept, that motor plan is going to go from Broca's area to the area where you have your hand and arm to control the muscles in order to speak using, for example, sign language. Okay, so a kind of simplified version of what I just said. Flow of language, visual and auditory cortex, so seeing language, hearing language, going to Wernicke's area. That allows us to recognize our words, then down to Broca's area, so we can make a motor plan for our words that we want to say. Then to our motor cortex in order to make the commands for the muscles to go. And then lastly, the muscles in order to create whatever speech or language processing we want to do. So even if we're writing language with our hands, same situation. Okay, this last section deals with our different cranial nerves. We have 12 of them. I'm only going to cover a few of them just because some of the other ones are kind of boring. So, yeah, I just chose the kind of cool ones. So, again, there's 12 of them. Here is, earlier what I mentioned, the cranial nerve number 2, our optic one, that chiasm. So you have your suprachiasmatic nucleus that's going to be behind this as you're looking, since you're looking from the bottom of your brain. So that's where that chiasm, so chi as in the Greek letter, it's above that little cross section. I don't stop writing them. Okay. So with our cranial nerves, they have both sensory and motor functions. So, but they only focus in the head and neck region of stuff. So this goes through all the different list of them, but I'm only going to do a few of them. Okay, so selective cranial nerves, I'm going to talk about cranial nerve number 1, which is olfactory, cranial nerve number 2, which is our optic for vision, number 5, which is trigeminal, face sensory, number 7 is facial, number 8, vestibulocochlear, which we'll talk again when we deal with hearing, and then number 10, the vagus nerve for our major internal organs. So number 1, our cranial nerve number 1, which is our olfactory nerve. Here we have our nasal passages. So we have the neurons here, our olfactory nerves, the nerve endings which are exposed to the outside environment. They receive and they detect whatever you breathe in. That detection goes through those little cribriform foramina that are on the ethmoid bone, so on the outside of that So on the outside of the Christy Golly, the little dots on the outside, those are actually holes, allowing for the passage of these nerves into the olfactory bulb and then on to cranial nerve number 1. So this is where we get our scent signal. Next one, our optic nerve. So cranial nerve number 2, we got 2 eyeballs, 1 nose. Okay, so 2 eyeballs. Our optic nerve goes from the back of the eyeballs. They cross and decussate. So later we'll talk about vision processing where the information is going to go to both sides of the brain. So that's why we have that crossover with those nerves. So eventually going all the way to the back of the brain to our primary visual cortex. Next one is trigeminal. So if you've ever had a filling at the dentist and they go in, they take that deep needle and they go all the way down to be able to give you that shot and then you go all numb, that's what they're doing. They're focusing on the sensory information that's coming from that nerve, but they're targeting just that one piece for that portion. If you're getting like a lower like lower cavity filling on the bottom. So from your mandible, those teeth. So that's what they're focusing on. So each of these so 1, 2, 3 for each of those branches is going to get information from different areas of the face. So that's why sometimes if they hit it wrong, if they give you a little bit extra and you got parts of your face that goes numb that you don't think should be going numb, yeah, oh well, it just affected it just because it's still connected. So you have different areas that have that information coming into the face. It also has a little bit of a motor component, so controlling your lower jaw. Okay, next one, facial nerve, number 7. So this one also has a motor and sensory information going towards the brain. We'll talk more about this section later, but the vestibulocochlear nerve, so from the vestibule region, this is getting our balance from our semicircular ducts. We'll talk about their functions later, but that information goes on the vestibular nerve and joins with the information coming from our cochlear. So the cochlear nerve, and they combine to form our vestibulocochlear nerve, which is cranial nerve number 8. So kind of cute way of remembering that one is that it's in the shape of a 8. So our semicircular ducts and our cochlear kind of look like a number 8, and maybe that'll help you remember that. So our hearing information comes in, swings on our eardrum, beats through our inner ear bones, and sends that information, and they're able to process it. So both hearing and balance for vestibulocochlear nerve number 8. And then the last one, so our vagus nerve. So this is going to send sensory information from our major organs and send it to the brain. So part of its function, just making sure everything's working, just getting that information to the brain. We have 2 major branches off of our vagus nerve. If both of them are cut, you're going to die. Just saying. Okay, so, because I had a friend who actually ended up having this branch cut because he was having digestion issues, and it was, yeah, really bad. Anyway, so this is just telling your brain what's going on with your major internal organs. So the easy way to remember this, thinking of Las Vegas, so the city in Nevada. So you have your big strip, kind of the old portion of Vegas, where you have your, like, big casinos and hotels. So, for example, like the Wynn hotels, some of your older ones are kind of gone now. They've been replaced. Wynn should still be there, but some of the other ones in that main strip where you have like the mall and Madame Tussauds, that area. And then there's also a new portion of Vegas. We're focusing just on the strip, your big casinos that are on the sides of that strip, so like Las Vegas. So for the now organs. So that's the last bit of... last bit of our, what is this, chapter 14, and we're going to move on to chapter 13.